And actually, we've got to finish the last topic of chapter 10. Now, remember, chapter 10 is about interest groups. Chapter 11, sorry, interest groups. And interest groups, if you recall, they do link common citizens to the government. But whereas political parties are dealing with people, interest groups focus on policies and programs. Hopefully you saw some of your Module 3 assignments and the discussion. I'm kind of excited about it. Is about you guys reading up about 3 different special interest groups and sharing what you found and talking about interest groups. So we're going to have, we have this one assignment that's focused on interest groups. So this takes us to the last 2 types of groups that we're going to look at. And they're called PACs and super PACs. PACs is an acronym for Political Action Committee. And the main way that these groups influence politicians is through money.
Guys, once you reach a certain age,
they want they contribute money to elected officials so that they can have an influence. One second. All righty, hold on a second. Where'd you guys go? Come back. There you are. So the first group is a PAC, or a Political Action Committee. And these committees are those that contribute money to federal candidates, and they have limits. A PAC can contribute up to $5,000 per election to a candidate. Now, they can also contribute $5,000 to another PAC. So they could give $5,000, let's say in 2023, they can give $5,000 to Donald Trump. And then this specific PAC can give $5,000 to another PAC. And then they can give $15,000 to the National Party Committee, the Republican Party Committee. And then they can give $5,000 a year to a state party committee. Also, that $15,000 that they can give to a national party is $15,000 per year. The $5,000 that they can give to another PAC is $5,000 a year. But when it comes to an election, they can only give $5,000 total to, example, the Donald Trump campaign. They can't give $5,000 in 2022 and then $5,000 in 2023. It's only $5,000 total. But the main point is, you can see that they give money. And so in a sense, candidates ask PACs to
Show me the money. Show me the money. I need to feel you, Jerry. Show me the money. Jerry, you better yell. Show me the money.
That's what candidates do to PACs. Show me the money. Little clip there from Jerry Maguire. This really old movie with this really old actor named Tom Cruise. So anyway, you might have heard of him. All right, are you awake? Are you with me? All right, what's a super PAC? Now, super PACs have only been around since 2010. So about the time you guys turn 7 or 8 or 6, whatever it might be. So you guys are older than the super PACs. And a super PAC is a much bigger monster than a PAC. A super PAC, sometimes you'll hear them called a 527 group. They can give unlimited cash, but they cannot give it directly to a candidate. They cannot give it directly, and this is all in your textbook. They cannot give it directly to a candidate or to a political party, but they can spend as much as they want to influence an election, as long as they don't give money directly to the candidate or to his party, and they cannot coordinate. They cannot coordinate with the campaign or the candidate. Super PACs can raise money as much as they want, not just from individuals, but from corporations, from unions, from associations, as well as individuals. So super PACs have become a key strategy or a piece of the strategy for candidates. Another way they differ is in a PAC has to report all of the money that's been given to them, and they have to give a list of the donors. Super PACs do not have to do that, and you can give anonymously to a super PAC. This cartoon is a fairly accurate representation. They're able to change the course of a Democratic election with a single check, a super PAC. And the new must-have accessory for the super rich. It's a super PAC that holds all your political influence, plus all the politicians that you bought and paid for. Now that might be that, you know, this is a satire cartoon, so it's a little bit over the top, but a lot of truth there about the influence that PACs and super PACs can have on elections. So any questions? usually your PACs are formed by businesses or groups. Like what's a business? Well, let's just go with what we talked about Monday, the John Deere Corporation. John Deere most likely has their own PAC, a political action committee. All right, on to Congress. Congress, of course, you guys remember it's one of the three branches of our government. It is the first branch that is, it is the first branch in which all of its functions and all of the rules and all of the constraints that go with it are lined. It's the first one that's lined out in the Constitution, right? Article 1 is about Congress. There's a reason for that. The founders, and James Madison specifically, who is considered the father of the Constitution, referred to Congress as the first branch of the national government. And again, he and the other framers thought it was so important that this is the first article in the Constitution. Not only is it the first article, it's the longest one. But think back even to our first government structure, the Articles of Confederation. There was no, remember this, there was no presidency as far as there being an office, or I'm sorry, as far as there being an institution. There was a president, but he was chosen by Congress, not the people. The main government body in the Articles of Confederation was the Congress, the legislative body. The president was pretty much nothing, and there was really no federal court system. We could have a debate about which branch of government is the most powerful. Now, we would say, according to good technical, according to the absolute theory of government, that all branches are equal and they have checks and balances on each other. But there has been a back and forth between the branches at times, and especially between Congress and the executive office, the presidency, of who is the most powerful and who has the most influence. We will not debate that, and we will not have to worry about that for the test. But I think it's enough to understand that the framers felt like this is probably the most important branch, and so it's mentioned first, and it gets the most ink in the Constitution. Some of the reasons why people might think it's the most powerful branch, along with it being the first branch of government, is they have the power to tax, right? Power of the purse. if the president were to veto some legislation, Congress can then come back, and if they have enough votes, they can override a presidential veto. And then Congress can also expand or diminish the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. This was illustrated last year during Trump's final year when another conservative Supreme Court judge was put on the court, another woman named Amy Coney Barrett. And after she was nominated by Trump, and then she was then favorably voted upon by the Congress, there was talk about, after Biden became president, should we add 2 more Supreme Court justices? Right now we have 9 justices. There was talk about upping that number to 11. The reason being that maybe Biden could appoint 2 liberal judges to put the court back on the liberal side. But the discussion came up, but it illustrates that Congress has the power to increase the amount of judges. So the question is, do those things mean that Congress is the ultimate power broker? Well, we'll leave that for political scientists to debate. We won't have to worry about that. All right, how do you become a member of Congress? Remember, there's 2 chambers in Congress. There's the House of Representatives and there is the Senate. In order to be a rep, you have to be 25 years old. You have had to have been a citizen for 7 years. And you have to actually live in the state that you want to represent. That's a good policy. If you want to be a senator, you have to be a little bit older, 30 years old. Have been a citizen for 9 years, a US citizen, and live in the state, once again, that you want to represent. That's it. Those are the qualifications. You don't have to have a political science degree from college. You don't have to be someone who served in the military. You don't have to be the son or daughter of a politician. Just simply a US citizen for so many years who has reached a certain age, and you live in the state that you want to represent. We won't take a lot of time on this because you should know kind of the gist of this. But what's the difference between these 2 chambers? And this goes back to our study of the formation of the Constitution. Our legislative branch was going to be bicameral. Remember that? Which means the Senate is going to make sure that every state has equal representation, all the way from small little Rhode Island to heavily populated California. Every state gets 2 senators. But then the other part of the bicameral Congress is that there will be a chamber that has representatives from every state based on the state's population. And so this, while the Senate is going to have exactly 100 members, because there's 50 states and every state gets 2, the House of Representatives has a lot more people. Currently, there's 435 members. Not only is this based on state population, but this is based on the national population. That's why we take a census every 10 years, so that we understand if we need to add representatives or take away some. Usually there's one representative for about every 70,000 people. Oh, I'm sorry, 700,000 people. So we have 5 representatives in Oklahoma based on a population of 3.5 million. Divide that by 700,000 and you get 5 different districts with about 700,000 people in each district. Senators serve for 6 years. Representatives serve for 2 years. Senators are representatives of the whole state, while representatives come from smaller areas, and so they pretty much represent their smaller district within the state. Being a senator usually carries a little bit more prestige. And then because of that, they are more visible in the news. Representatives are elected by popular vote. Senators are chosen by state, they used to be chosen by state congresses until the 17th Amendment made that popular vote also. You can see they make the same amount of money, $174,000 a year. Any questions on the qualifications and the number of people in Congress? Anybody here, after seeing that salary, want to aspire to be a senator or representative? Anybody aspiring to make more money than that when you become whatever you're going to become? Nobody wants to make more than 174,000 a year? I would. Hey, thank you. All right, no questions. Quiet bunch today. What are the powers of the Congress? Remember, there's the exclusive powers that only Congress has. And even within the 2 chambers, there are exclusive powers. You can see the examples there. Excuse me. The House of Representatives is the chamber that gets the ball rolling and votes on impeachment. And that's not just the president, but that can be a Supreme Court judge or another congressperson. They get the ball rolling and they vote for impeachment. They initiate bills that have to do with money. And if for some reason the Electoral College was tied, let's say it was 269 to 269, and we'll use the election from a year ago, Biden and Trump, let's say it tied at 269 to 269, then it would fall upon the House of Representatives to elect the new president. The Senate, they confirm people who are appointed, like the aforementioned Amy Coney Barrett, the last Supreme Court justice to be confirmed. She was nominated by the president. She was voted upon by the House, and then she was confirmed by the Senate. Now, if there was an electoral college tie, the House would elect the president, but notice that the Senate would elect the vice president. Which that's kind of surprising to me. I did not realize that. Because I figure if you elect the president, the vice president comes with them. So I guess on a very technical term, if there was a tie last year, and let's say the House of Representatives was mostly had a Republican majority, they could have they would have elected Donald Trump. And then if the Senate had a 50-50 or maybe even a Democratic majority, they could have, according to this, technically elected Kamala Harris to be the vice president. That would have been interesting. And then the two chambers have powers that they share: passing legislation, declaring war, things like that. Any questions? Or as David S. Pumpkins would say, any questions? Y'all know who David Pumpkins is?
No.
It's like one of the best Saturday Night Live skits ever. Tom Hanks. Just type in David Pumpkins and you'll be treated. And since Halloween's just a couple of days away, you'll be introduced, and you might want to get a David S. Pumpkins outfit for your Halloween costume. All righty. I'm sidetracked, so let me bring it up. Hope y'all don't mind me getting sidetracked. But there's Pumpkins and his two skeleton beatbox boys. So you got to watch it. It's just great stuff. See, there's a Halloween outfit you could get. All right, now don't be watching it while I'm lecturing with your little headphones on. Okay. Back to Congress. You will hear a lot of times the term incumbency. That simply means whenever there's an election, you have the incumbent running against all the others, and the incumbent is just the person who already has the office. And a lot of times, if you're the incumbent, you have an advantage. Incumbents get reelected a lot. All right, now this slide shows us about a very important way to define the Congress. Congress can be defined as balancing national interests let me go back. Balancing national goals with local interests, right? Let's go face to face. Because if you're elected, for example, our representative is Mark Wayne Mullen for Southeast Oklahoma. If you're elected and then he gets on a plane and goes to Washington, D.C., he's got to work with all the other congressmen about national things, but he also has to represent us here in Southeast Oklahoma. And so he's got to do that balancing act between national goals and local interests. So the local interests are the constituents, that's you and I. We are citizens who elected our congressperson and they represent us. They go to Washington, D.C., and we expect them to work with other senators and other congresspeople to pass bills that represent our interests. You'll hear a term called pork barrel. Pork barrel when it comes to Congress. These are a lot of times projects that a congressman will bring in a bill in which he or she is trying to get money for their state for a local project. A very popular one a few years ago was the congressman in Alaska trying to get money to build this bridge, which became known as the Bridge to Nowhere. And they wanted millions and millions of dollars. Well, this was something that was pork. All righty. I think we'll stop there. We'll pick up next week with presiding officers. So any questions? And since I'm such a nice and thoughtful instructor, I will link David S. Pumpkins in the course homepage for you to enjoy. Nothing? All right, so I've got your discussion and your brief assignments posted. I'm still working on the outline, so have a great Wednesday and a great Thursday. And we'll see you on this coming Franklin Friday.
Whoop, whoop. See ya.
See you later.